News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow.
Karen, we begin in Washington, where President Donald Trump's massive tax and spending cut bill is now back before the House. The legislation barely passed the Senate with a tie-breaking vote from Vice President J.D. Vance. Now it's running into resistance from Republicans who don't like some of the changes to the bill. House Speaker Mike Johnson says he's not surprised.
We knew we would come to this moment. We knew the Senate would amend the House product. I encouraged them to amend it as lightly as possible. They went a little further than many of us would have preferred.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says moderates in his caucus are worried about the scale of Medicaid cuts in the Senate bill, while ultra-conservatives are vowing to oppose it over its deficit impact. President Trump is calling resistant Republicans grandstanders. GOP leaders hope to vote on the bill today so it can get to the president's desk by the end of the week.
Meanwhile, Nathan, there's just 1 week left until President Trump's July 9th deadline to raise tariff rates on dozens of countries. The president says he's not considering any delays, and he's renewing his threat to cut off talks and impose higher rates on several nations, including Japan. President Trump is sounding more optimistic about reaching a deal with India. He says it's possible to lower the country's tariffs if India allows U.S. companies to compete in its market.
Now we have new developments in the Middle East, Karen. President Trump says Israel has agreed on terms for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. He's warning Hamas to accept the deal before conditions get worse. But Bloomberg Jerusalem reporter Dan Williams says there is no sign the militant group has changed its position.
It would appear its conditions remain firm. Those conditions are for a full Israeli withdrawal, or actually, more precisely, an Israeli declaration that this war is over with a full withdrawal of troops and tanks from the Gaza Strip. Effectively, Hamas wants a guarantee that once it delivers all the hostages it still holds, some 50 people, then it will be effectively provided immunity from an Israeli offensive designed from the outset to topple it from power and to disarm it.
Bloomberg's Dan Williams says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to visit the White House next week.
As for the war in Ukraine, Nathan, the Trump administration has halted weapons transfers to Kyiv as Russia's attacks intensify. The White House confirmed a report from Politico, which said the Pentagon's Undersecretary for Policy spearheaded the move on concerns U.S. stockpiles had run too low. The move comes days after Russia launched its heaviest attack yet over the weekend, a record 537 drones and missiles fired across Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign minister has summoned a top U.S. diplomat to discuss military aid. He says any delays would encourage Russia to continue the war.
Turning to markets now, Karen, futures are a touch higher this morning ahead of tomorrow's key jobs report. Fed Chair Jay Powell says the central bank would likely have cut interest rates already this year, if not for President Trump's use of tariffs. Powell spoke at the European Central Bank Forum in Central Portugal.
In effect, we went on hold when we saw the size of the tariffs, and essentially all inflation forecasts for the United States went up materially as a consequence of the tariffs.
In remarks heard live on Bloomberg, Fed Chair Jay Powell said he's focused on maintaining the Fed's dual mandate despite political pressure to move on rates. The Fed's next decision is July 30th.
Nathan, we are keeping an eye on bank shares this morning. This is after Wall Street's biggest lenders boosted their dividends. And we bring in Bloomberg's John Tucker with more. John, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Karen. J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Bank of America among the big Wall Street lenders that are raising their quarterly payouts. Now, this payday for investors also includes a $50 billion share buyback from J.P. Morgan. The move comes after the banks passed the annual Fed stress test, a product of the 2008 financial crisis. The Fed's exam sets the tone for how aggressive banks are in returning capital to their shareholders. All 22 banks comfortably passed after determining they could withstand more than $550 billion in losses if some financial disaster took place. The Fed said the results showed that the large banks are well positioned to weather a severe recession. It is important to note the test did get easier this time around. Pre-market shares of J.P. Morgan Chase up 0.7%. And in New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. We're also watching shares of Centene. They are plunging in the pre-market, down 26.5%. The health insurer pulled its 2025 guidance. Centene focuses mostly on Medicaid and Affordable Care Act insurance marketplaces. It says an early analysis of data showed a significant revenue hit.
Nathan, Tesla will deliver its latest quarterly sales report later this morning. Analysts expect a 12% drop from last year. The stock is off to a rough start for the third quarter, with Elon Musk and President Trump renewing their feud over the tax and spending cut bill. Tesla shares slumped more than 5% yesterday. This morning, they're up 1.2%.
And Karen, Paramount Global's reached a settlement with President Trump over his lawsuit alleging election interference by CBS News. The network showed two different versions of a 60 Minutes interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris back in October. Paramount agreed to pay $16 million, including plaintiff's fees. The rest will go to a future presidential library. President Trump was seeking $20 billion. No money will go to him directly. This deal is seen as critical for Paramount to gain federal approval for its merger with Skydance Media.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.